Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Autumn and I am on a mission to become a multi-millionaire. On this channel, I document all of my personal finance journey, everything from budgeting and saving to investing. I keep track of my net worth, spending, retirement, everything that is going to get me one step closer to that millionaire mark. If you want to follow along with me, go ahead and subscribe to my channel and give this video a thumbs up. Today, we're looking back at my January spending, and then we're also setting up the budget for February. I follow zero-based budgeting, which means that every dollar that comes into my account has a job. And if you want to see how I set up my 2025 budget for the whole year, there is a video on that somewhere on this channel. I'll have it linked below. But we're going to recap January to see how close my budgeted amounts came out to what I actually spent and where I spent the majority of my money. So if we hop into the spreadsheet, I have these two columns here. I have the projected bill in and the current bill in. So the category bill in just basically means how much money did I set aside for this month for a particular category. So I had what I projected to set aside, and then I have current bill in, which is the actual amount that I ended up setting aside. The current bill out is how much I actually spent on that particular item this month. It is usually the exact amount as the current bill in, so that I can once again end with zero in every category for the month, except for those categories where I intentionally set money aside for quarterly or annual expenses. So as we go through the spreadsheet, a majority of the amounts that I projected ended up to be the true total. And you can see here in the difference column, most of it is zero. So for instance, I budgeted $56.99 for this bill, and that's how much I actually ended up putting towards it, because the amount of the bill didn't change. And then if we skip over to current bill out, that's how much I actually paid. So basically it means I thought I was going to put in $56.99. I actually put in $56.99. And then over here, I paid $56.99. So those are the three things that I'm keeping track of. And as you can see, for most of them, they are exactly what I thought they were going to be. So transferring money to my high yield savings account, I was able to transfer the amount of money I thought. Putting money in my brokerage account, I was able to transfer 100 there. My HVAC maintenance, everything looks good all the way up till Disney Plus. So I thought I was going to put in $25.73, but turns out when I got the bill or the charge, it was $30.89. So it went up again. Disney Plus went up again. I actually added in HBO Max, like I bundled them together. So it turns out it'll be cheaper over the course of the year than if I was just paying for Max separately, but it did make my Disney Plus bill go up. So I had to adjust the current bill into $30.89, which was an increase of $5.16. And then I ended up paying that $30.89. Netflix was the same. My car payment, my husband's car payment was the same. Trash. Now, this is an instance where I thought I was going to set aside $85. I did set aside $85, but if we look at the current bill out, it's $0 because I did not spend any money in January on trash. Trash is a quarterly bill that I pay in March, but I like to set aside the same amount of money each month so that I'm not surprised by that bill. And so if we move over to the next columns in the spreadsheet, then the last two columns are the amount to transfer and the surplus balance. So the amount to transfer means how much money am I transferring to my surplus account in this particular line item, and it's the full $85. Since I put in $85, I spent zero, I'm transferring the full $85, which means that my surplus balance will be $85 as I had $0 in this particular bucket for January. Next month, for instance, I am going to set aside that same $85 and I'm going to spend zero. And so the amount of transfer will be $85, but then the total surplus balance will be 85 times 2, which is 170. So that surplus balance will be 170. It's just going to accumulate month over month. And so that's how I utilize these last two columns. Okay, and again with Sling TV, it's always the TV. Last month, this was $84.46, so that's what I put this month, only to find out that it has jumped to $90.63. So Sling increased by $6.17 a month, so I did end up putting in $90.63, only to then spend $90.63. Annual TV streaming, I thought I was going to put in $60, but I changed it. I actually brought it down to $55 because if we go back up to that Disney Plus that I increased by $5, some of that money from annual streaming was going to pay the annual HBO Max bill. Well, I don't have an annual HBO Max bill anymore. I've rolled it into Disney Plus. So I kind of just borrowed from my annual streaming bucket, and I don't need to set aside that money there. So I'm giving that $5 to Disney Plus. So I actually set aside less than what I projected, which is totally fine. But we see here, I've been saving up all of 2024, so I actually have a surplus, a beginning surplus of $376.80. And this is because Amazon Prime comes out in February. I'm pretty sure Apple TV comes out in February, and then Peacock, Paramount, and one other one comes out in June. So I've been building up money this entire time. So I have $376, and I'm going to add the $55 that I set aside for this month, so that at the end of the month, my new surplus balance will be $431. So I'm basically creating just a ton of mini little sinking funds that I'm holding money for. And then that way I can just pay for these large quarterly or annual expenses without breaking the bank, essentially. Life insurance, I set aside $148.52. It actually went up by 85 cents. So I'm totally okay with that. So I ended up spending that $149.37. My cell phone bill was the same. The internet bill was off by 2 cents. It was cheaper than I thought it was going to be for the last, however many months. It's been $113.69. This month it was $113.67. So I lowered the amount that I put in by 2 cents, and then I paid the actual amount, which was $113.67. Home security was the same. Car insurance was the same. The credit monitoring was the same. The tax bill that we have outstanding, it was the same. So the amount that I thought I was going to put in was the amount that I actually ended up putting in, and that was the amount I ended up spending. So that is all as I projected, which is great. The electric and gas bill, so I usually put in $250 a month, regardless of what it actually ends up being, because once again, electric and gas is one of those things that fluctuates throughout the year. So I've summed up how much it's been for the past year and divided that by 12, and then realized if I set aside approximately $250 a month, then that way I could start building up a surplus if the gas wasn't $250. And then if ever it were, like it was this month, I would have money to pull from. So I projected that I was going to put aside $250. I actually did put aside $250. And then if we look here, I already had a beginning surplus. So coming into the month, I already had $425.80 in my electric and gas bucket because I knew that I was going to need that money. I've been building it up all last year. And it was good that I did that because my bill this month was actually $284.92. So what that means is I spent the entire $250 that I set aside for the current month. And then I actually had to pull from my surplus or my gas and electric sinking fund. I had to pull $34.92 from that. And that left me with a surplus balance of $390.88. So this is the first time I've ever had to pull from my surplus. It has not been, the gas hasn't been over $2.50 in, like a couple of years, but January was tough. And I guess December was tough if it's the January bill. So I'm glad I had that surplus set aside. Of the $425, I had to use $34. That still leaves me with $390. And we're moving into months where hopefully it won't be over $250. Therefore, I can continue to build up that buffer. So if we look at the water bill, I projected to set aside $125, but I ended up only putting in $101.21. And that's because that's how much the water bill was. So I put aside $125, but then I received the water bill and saw that it was only $101. And the thing is, I already have a buffer in the water bill sinking fund for $136.47. I don't need to add any more to that buffer, at least not for now. So I lowered the amount that I actually put in toward the water bill by $23.79 to just cover the water bill straight. And so even though I'm not putting any money in the surplus remains the same of $136.47. So I still have a buffer there if for any reason the water bill ever got over $125. And I think that would mean we're doing something very wrong. Okay, if we look at my HELOC, so this is where a majority of our money is going, is paying down debt. And so I budgeted that I was going to be able to put I projected that I was going to be able to put $2,800. I actually was able to put in that full $2,800, and I applied that $2,800 toward our home equity line of credit. We are beating that thing down. Next is the mortgage. So I projected $907. That's how much it ended up being, and then that's how much I ended up paying. Next, another family bill that isn't due this month, but I set the $45 aside, so it is going to be transferred to the surplus account. And then I have lawn care. So I projected that I was going to put in $100, but then when I looked back at my annual spending for 2024, which I have a video on if you want to go watch, I realized that we spent about $2,400 on lawn care, meaning that it is $200 a month. So I should start saving up for that now. Even though we won't need lawn care till like March or April or May, I need to start putting away that $200 a month now. So I thought I could get away with 100. Turns out I have to start putting away 200. So I upped that by 100. But then again, I didn't spend any money on lawn care this month. So I'm just going to transfer that to my surplus account. And then finally, we have lifestyle expenses. So lifestyle expenses is really the catch-all bucket where all of my other monthly spending goes. So groceries, gas, restaurants, anything, clothes, Amazon, like anything that's not a bill. Because as you see here, this keeps track of bills and debt payoff. I have found that I don't really need, from a budgeting standpoint, to budget for particular categories. Like I'm only going to spend $100 on gas this month and $300 on groceries. Like I don't care about the amount. I just care that I stay within a specific buffer, meaning that I don't go over my monthly allowance. And anytime I need to play with the numbers for the bills, so if I need to add any more or subtract any, the lifestyle is usually the bucket that I pull from. So in looking at my projections, I thought I was going to put in $1,586.64, and then that would get me to my monthly budgeted income of $7,750, which is how much we put into our budget each month, is $7,750. Well, any money that I didn't spend on bills or investing or setting aside, I give that to myself in lifestyle expenses. But turns out I had to put in more money in certain areas than I thought. And whenever I have to do that, I always steal from lifestyle. Because here's the thing, me and my husband don't really spend a lot anyway. So I always know that I can lower our lifestyle bucket and it won't cause a problem. Because you can see the actual bill in, or the actual amount that I put aside, was $1,503.27. So that was actually $83.37 less than I thought. But that still got us to that $77.50. So that's how much our budget's going to be no matter what. Where the different money is going towards, that depends, but it always has to equal that $77.50. And it doesn't really matter that I took that $83.37, because if we look at the current bill out, or how much we actually spent on lifestyle expenses, it was only $1,353.08. So with that being said, we have $150.19 that we can add to surplus and kind of roll over into the next month, because most months we do stay under our lifestyle expenses, but sometimes we go over, and it's good to have a buffer to tap into right here. And then I thought, for informational purposes, it would just be fun to see the top 5 lifestyle categories where our money was going. And it turns out it's mostly food. So we spent $362 at Costco on groceries. We spent $311 at Meijer on groceries. And then I had my hair appointments. And then we went to a restaurant happy hour. That was really fun. That was a really fun date night. That was $60. And then gas at Thornton's for $41. And that came to a total of $894. So of that $1,353, a good $900 of it was spent in these 5 categories. And then I also like to keep track of any outside of the budget purchases that I have made. So once again, the budget is $77.50. That pays for our current bills and our current lifestyle. But there are larger things that we are saving and spending for, mostly vacations. A car down payment's going to be on there pretty soon. But I like to keep track of where did I spend money that maybe wasn't reflected in this budget. And this month, we actually bought plane tickets for our family vacation to Savannah. So we're going to Savannah as a family this year. And I bought the plane tickets because they were on a good deal. And so then I also put the income source, like where did that money come from? And so it came from our high yield savings account. I have a particular section for fund money, which is where I save for vacations and all sorts of other sinking funds. And then I have a particular line item for Savannah 2025. I actually have how I set up my savings account in another video here. So if you want to see how all of my high yield savings accounts balances are working, you can go watch that. But I did pull from the Savannah 2025 fund in order to purchase our plane tickets. I bought 3 plane tickets for essentially $1,100. So that didn't touch this budget right here, but it is money that we did spend. And I do also update my monthly high yield savings account balances as well. So when that video comes out for January, you will see that I have deducted the Savannah amount by this amount that I spent here. So overall, I essentially stayed on budget this month, and I am very happy about that. I really don't go over budget. I just move money around within the different buckets. Like really, we can't go over $7,750. We don't have the money. So, but within that, we can shift things to different buckets depending on where it needs to go. So this month, everything shifted in a way that didn't cause any trouble. And so now when I am looking at February's, what I basically did was just take the current bill in, so the actual amount that I had to put in toward the bills, I copied that to my projection from February, because once again, Disney Plus went up, Sling went up. I know these things are now going to be that price from now on, so I can set the projection to be the price that I know it's going to be. So I don't really have any different amounts for February. It all looks the exact same. I do have a little bit less in lifestyle. That money must be spread somewhere out through here, and we'll see. Oh, I know what it is. So once again, I have that $125 set aside for water. I might lower that by $20, and then which I'll give myself the $20 in lifestyle, because I'm usually right around that $1,500 mark, but we'll see what that ends up being. Regardless, even if it's $1,479, we can pretty much still stick to that budget. And then if we look at my beginning surpluses for February, so I'm already going to have $85 in the trash fund. I have $431 in the annual TV streaming fund. I have $390 in the electric gas bill fund, and I have $136 in the water bill fund, and then another family bill for $45. I already have $200 set aside for lawn care, and then I do have that lifestyle surplus balance of $150.19. So I do have a third bank account, or I have another bank account for surplus. So I just transfer all the money that's left over. So we see here this $535, which is the sum of the amount to transfer. I have another bank account in my main bank, and I'll just transfer that money, and it ends up sitting in a checking account right next to my main bill account. Okay, I'm excited. I'm gearing up for February. January was off to a great start. I mean, it felt like the month took forever, but we are in a good spot. And check back next month so you can see how February went. Thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you next time.